So first things first, before we even get into this, I did want to quickly cover some other basic tips so that you're not overwhelmed. In previous tutorials, I covered the fact that there are 3 major keys you're going to need to animate in Blender. Those are R for rotate, S for scale, and G for transform. Something else to consider is that there are also points in which things may be rotated by. The default is median, and generally I recommend using median to move most things. It certainly works best for the rig. But if by any chance something is moving and it's not moving in the way that you want it to, like for example if I rotate this and it rotates from a point way below it like that, then all you have to do is press Shift and then use your right mouse key to place a point here, and then all you have to do is click on this transform pivot point, choose 3D cursor, and you should be able to rotate it from the point that it's at. The only other thing I wanted to let you guys know if you are overwhelmed by Blender is how to visually understand where things are in a 3D space and how to quickly find things if they get lost. So what you see when you open this system is something like this, right? Especially if you're pressing num key 0 to go straight to camera view, which is what I recommend if you're just working with 2D. But what's actually happening is something like this. We have an actual 3D space, and I know some of you have a pretty good understanding of how 3D works, but where this can get a little frustrating and stressful is sometimes you bring something in and it's way out there where you can't find it. So the quickest way to just quickly push something to where it should be is, let's go ahead and import an item so I can show you what I mean. Let's go Shift A, Images Planes. Alrighty. And let's pick an item here. Today I think I want to use this cute little heart box. And this one imported itself in the correct place, but as you can see, it's massive compared to the camera. So in order to fix this, all I'm going to do is press num 0, and I'm going to scale it down by pressing S, and scale it down, scale it down. All you're going to do is press S and move your mouse and click when you're done until I think it's a reasonable size. Now sometimes an item's going to be like this, it's going to be I can't even, where is that? All you got to do is press the numpad 0, and then press Alt-G, Alt-R, Alt-S, and then if you use your middle mouse to rotate, you're going to see that it is in the scene, it's just sideways. Now in the scene collection, it seems to have tucked itself inside my characters collection, so all I'm going to do is press M and place it in the scene collection so I can see that the item is now right here in the outliner. Now the next thing I'm going to do is make sure that you have Edit, Lock Object Mode turned off, and you're in Object Mode, because we don't have an armature for this, so we don't need to be in the rigging mode or the posing mode. And you're just gonna click on this item, press R, X to rotate by the X axis, which is kind of the axis that determines how flat things are gonna be in our perspective. And you're just gonna rotate it, and then this little thing's gonna pop up here, and you're gonna put 90. Now, it's just about right. All we have to do is press S to scale it down so it fits in front of the camera. So that's one of the ways you can navigate the 3D space if you're getting lost, if it's overwhelming, you're where am I? Is you can use that middle mouse key. Your camera is your friend. You see this weird point with all of this branching off? That's our camera, and the camera's basically telling us where the character is, especially when you're so far away that you can't see it. The other thing you can do is you're I can't find my character, the space is so huge, the character is so tiny, the camera's 5,000 times bigger than the character, I can't even see the character, is go into your scene collection here on the right, and open this folder here, and open image data, and just pick any image. If all of these are closed, just open one, pick left shoulder, it doesn't matter, any image is okay, click it, and then when you go into this viewport, press Alt F. Alt F. What that's doing is it's telling your viewport to center around that item so that when you rotate around in the view, you're looking at it. And now you're going to be looking at the character. Now you just got to scroll in with your mouse wheel and rotate with your mouse wheel, and you should be centered on the character. See that? So that you won't lose it in space. I hope all of this helps moving forward. so that if you have any difficulties with this, contact me. I will make more Welcome to Blender tutorials covering these types of problems. A lot of the default settings in Blender can be a little tricky and unhelpful. So, we have our item. I'm going to go ahead and get rid of our flower bouquet because I love it, but we don't need it right now. I'm going to press 0 on the numpad so that we can go back into the camera view. I'm going to select our item in the outliner, which is this little space to the right. Press F2, and I'm going to name it Heart Box. If your layout is not like mine, feel free to re-enable the load UI setting and it will load my layout onto yours. Like this. Just press load UI. But I would recommend that you keep your layout like this at almost all times. So if you're done working on something, you can just go to New. After turning off load UI, turn off the load UI after opening this file. Press New, General, and then Control U, Save Startup. That will keep the UI in this position always. You'll never get lost again. So let's go ahead and close all of these folders in the Elaine container. Or the character container. Mine's labeled Elaine, but you can rename this to any character you want. And then click on the heart box. And the heart box looks pretty good in scale, but there's a great way to check that it's positioned correctly. We're gonna go down. If this is all closed like this, just go like this and lift it open. And if we go down into the second window, I can click here and change it to Shade Editor, and this will show us the shade or the shader for this item because this item is selected. Then go from linear to closest, and that will give you the beautiful, crisp image. So the only way to really test if something is the correct size and scale is to hold it up to another pixel and be like, do these look about the same? And they do, actually. I think proportionally this looks great. I also want you to know, it really doesn't matter if things are correct. No one is ever going to know. I am dead serious. No one is ever going to know unless it's something super obvious like the mouth on the face. People cannot tell proportional differences. Not generally. They're not paying attention. So don't sweat it if you can't get it just right. So I'm going to press GX to push this over here. GZ to line it up. We want it to be about on the floor where the feet are. The next thing we're going to do is I'm going to change shader to dope sheet. And we're going to make sure that on this timeline bar here, we press record. And then I already have a recording set up for my character to move, but you can go ahead and manually edit yours in. First things first, make sure that you switch this pivot to median. You'll remember to do this by habit, but if you start, if you click on the armature and start moving around via pivot, this will happen. Don't worry, press Alt-R, Alt-G, Alt-S, and it will go back to where it's supposed to, then just switch this to median. So nothing bad's gonna happen if you forget, don't worry. But it is useful to switch to median first so you're not panicking like, why is this happening? So I don't want you to worry about that. So switch to median. Then all you gotta do is animate the character as if they're picking up the item, but don't move the item at all. So the character's picking up the item, looks good. Click on that heart box or item, and you're gonna go to, if you go to this panel over here, you're gonna go to Object Constraint. Add Constraint, and you're gonna choose Child Up. So this is where the magic happens. This is where the object decides to follow this arm and then detach from it when we need it to. All we're gonna do is choose Target, click on this eyedropper, and hold it over your character when it says armature, click, and then bone, and just type this. L space hand. Left hand. Not left hand switch, left hand. Immediately, this object should go absolutely nuts and go somewhere weird. Don't worry about it. Go to the constraint, click clear inverse, set inverse. Should be where you expect it to be. Next, and a reminder that you've already done this little animation where the character picks up the item, right? So if you haven't done that, feel free to do that. Literally, all I did was bend the character over, reach out their arm, and put their arm back. Don't worry about it. So the next thing we're going to do is we're going to go to Influence, this here, and crank it down to 0. And I'm going to right-click it and put Insert Keyframe. And we're going to keep it there until that hand reaches it. So go ahead and move your little marker to frame 3 or whatever frame it is that the character's hand touches the item and it's keyframed as doing so. If you don't see that keyframe, just click on this arrow here that says only show selected and you should be able to see everything that's happening in the scene keyframed at once. Once you reach that keyframe, you're going to go 1 frame before it, insert keyframe again on influence, then go to that frame, that exact frame, crank it up to 100, replace keyframe. Now, it's moved again, right? Just clear inverse, set inverse. Now watch this magic happen. Boom, it's been parented. The item is now attached and it will move as expected. Now, if you don't like the way it sits in the hand, that is so easy to tweak. Just click on the object, press G, and then just click again. R, click again. S, click again. You've now keyframed the entire position of the item. Then go to frame 5 and just press G and use Z and X. GX, GZ, and just click to release every time you're done moving it. And this will allow you to gently position the object where you want it. You can also add a pivot here by pressing Shift, right, and it will add a 3D cursor, and then go down to this option here and switch. Remember how we switched this before? Switch it back to 3D cursor and press R, Y, and you can rotate the item so that it's positioned how you want it to. So now, the character picks up the item, and when the character lifts it into his hand, the item kind of just gently slides to where it's supposed to be. Now let's animate the character putting the item back down. It's gonna be just as simple. All you want to do is go to the frame right before the character releases the item, right click influence, insert keyframe, go to the frame where the character releases the item, and then turn influence off, and right click, crank it down to 0, right click, replace keyframe, and the item stays where it is. If you want the item to sit back where it was before, you can also just find these keyframes for the object transform and copy the position it was when the character picked it up, paste it, and your work is done. The item can easily be moved around. This item can even have multiple child constraints if you choose to duplicate this, and you can parent it to multiple characters and have the characters pass the item around. And every time the item becomes held by a character, that item will hold to the bone and glue exactly as it is. If you want this to happen multiple times with like multiple different positions of the item, you're probably going to want to duplicate this child and do it several times over, this child constraint. But that is the basics of how you have a character interact with an item like a sword, a piece of candy, anything you want. I hope this covered more ground. Contact me for any further tutorials. Shout out to the people that have been following me and following my tutorials. I'm extremely excited to help you. Alright, this has been ElaineAlways.